Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. In my daily show, I interview today's latest best-selling, buzziest, or underrated authors and story creators whose work I think is worth your time. As a bookstore owner, publisher, author, and obviously podcaster, I get a comprehensive look at everything that's coming out and spend my time curating the best books so you don't have to. Stay in the know, get insider insights, and connect with guests like I do every single day. For more information, go to zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. Molly Burke is the author of Unseen: How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice. Molly Burke is a blind public speaker, content creator, consultant, model, and author. With more than 5 million followers across social media, she uses her platform to advocate for greater inclusivity and representation at every touchpoint, uplifting and empowering others. She has partnered with major brands such as Aerie, Google, Bose, Samsung, Estee Lauder, Disney, Dove, Microsoft, Tommy Hilfiger, Crocs, and more. She received a Clio Lifetime Achievement Award and has spoken at the United Nations and the World Economic Forum in Davos. Molly is a Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient who has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Paper, Forbes, Adweek, Teen Vogue, and Allure, and appeared on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah and Today. She is based in Los Angeles. Welcome, Molly. Thanks so much for coming on Totally Booked to talk about your memoir, Scene. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited. This is my first podcast where I get to talk about the book.
No way.
Feel like you're the perfect person to chat with it about.
Oh, I love it. Publicists often put me first on people's schedules because I'm really just here to boost and support and try to get all the good out of the authors. So yay, I'm happy to be your first. Well, I loved your book. I learned so much about you, obviously. I learned about dangers of different organizations. I learned about guide dogs and despair and just so much. You just really did a beautiful job with this book. So congratulations.
Thank you. I feel like my guide dog just heard you because he stood up and just walked past me like, oh, that's my roll call. She said, guide dog, that's me.
Why don't you tell listeners a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it?
So a little bit of background on me. When I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed with a rare progressive eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa, which caused me to lose the majority of my vision at 14, which was a lot younger and faster than the doctors had anticipated. And when that happened, I not only lost my vision, but my friends. I fell into a deep depression, was severely bullied, and really struggled in many ways to rebuild my life. I say it was like trying to grieve the death of yourself while figuring out how to keep living, which is a very profound experience at any age, but particularly at 14 years old when you're already going through so much. But I really rebuilt my life thanks to a lot of support from my family and medical professionals. And along the journey, I realized that I could either be a victim to my circumstance or I could do something to try to change it. And the only way to change it was through actively getting out there and trying to educate society and change the misconceptions and the stereotypes that were frustrating me so much. And so that's what I started doing. And at 18 years old, I started touring full time as a speaker, which I get into a lot in this book, which I've never talked about before. My followers who have spent the last 11 years with me, they know that that's how my career started, but they don't know what it was really like. They know the glamorous side of what it looked like. They don't know what it was really like the way you do since you got to read the advanced copy. So I did that for 2 years. I ended up having a workplace accident, quit my job, moved back in with my parents in the suburbs and felt like I was starting life all over again. I was the drama of a 20-year-old, I was like, oh my God, I peaked at 20. What am I going to do now with my life? Because, I grew up with the unemployment statistics that all blind people and disabled people live with, which for me was knowing that in Canada, where I grew up, 80% of blind people were unemployed. And that was really terrifying. My whole life, that it felt like it plagued me. Like it was just in the back of my mind all the time that I was living with this looming unemployment statistic. And I happen to be a blind person who most of my passions are in visual arts. I love makeup and fashion and home decor and design. And I know that as much as I love those things, it would be very hard to work as a fully blind person in those visual fields, because those are difficult fields for anybody to break into. And I also grew up always wanting to work in entertainment. And I also knew it would be very difficult to work in entertainment as a disabled woman, because disabled people have less than 3.1% media representation in 2025, let alone the early 2000s. So I really felt a lot of despair around, now that I've lost this incredible opportunity that I thought I had had for these 2 years, like, what am I going to do with my life? Am I just going to have to live on like government support and live in my parents' home for the rest of my life? I'm such an ambitious, hardworking person. Like, I can't accept that, but I don't know where to go from here. And that was 11 years ago. And I started social media, and I've grown a platform of over 5 million followers. And I think I'm really known for being vulnerable and honest and authentic. And I've been all of those things very openly. And yet there was still so much I had never felt safe or comfortable to share. And that was ultimately why I wrote this book. It was my way of saying, you know a lot about me, but man, there's still so much you don't know. And I only feel comfortable putting it in the form of a book, which is so much more intimate than a video that can be shared thousands of times with comments that everybody else can share and put into a Reddit thread and everybody gets their opinion, or even live on stage to hundreds or thousands of people at a time. Putting it in a book, it's me and it's you, the reader, sharing this moment.
Well, I loved sharing the moment with you. And who's laughing now, really, with those statistics? And you have just, hit it out of the park. Your career obviously is just amazing. One of my kids, by the way, was like, oh, I follow her when I said that I was coming to interview you. So you've become a superstar. And to do it with so many obstacles, including the emotional toll that your sort of diagnosis took and adapting to that and the physical challenges, it's really amazing. Let's go back, though, to the job, because first of all, you, as you say, in great detail, you talk about this speaking engagement, which is essentially like joining a cult, and where you were living there among vermin and in the worst possible conditions, and they did not care about you getting sick. They did not care about you, full stop, and tried to like milk you out of a book deal. I mean, like all the stuff I could not believe. Talk a little bit about that. And also, is that the company that your lawyer made you take half the book out to discuss?
Yes. So going into this book, I was very clear with my publisher before I ever agreed to write it that we were going to need a legal read. And that was partly why I felt finally safe sharing these stories, so many of the stories in this book, because I knew like I was going to have a lawyer vet them, that each word was handpicked to make sure that I was protecting myself. Because at the end of the day, like, I am speaking a little bit disparagingly of large entities with power and a reputation to uphold. And at the end of the day, I'm not sharing my story to tear them down. I'm sharing my story to take back my power, because I felt silenced for so long. I felt silenced out of my own fear. But I think these stories are important to share. These stories are important to talk about. And the reality is that I felt trapped in a circumstance because of the unemployment statistics I knew that I was facing as a disabled woman, and the ways in which the systemic oppression in society of disabled people sets us up for being in harmful situations, right? And so for me, it was really important that I finally be able to talk about this, but also that I talk about it in a way that is safe, that protects me, because disabled voices are already at a disadvantage, are already so often silenced, minority voices in general. And so being able to feel like, okay, like a lawyer has vetted this, I've done my best. You'll see a legal disclaimer at the beginning. It says, names and identifying characteristics have been changed. Dialogue has been recreated. I did my best to keep their anonymity. I did my best to protect them as well, even though they don't necessarily deserve it, because it's not about tearing them down. As I said, it's about freeing myself.
Well, basically, this organization preyed on you as someone who was vulnerable by, beefing you up in a way and saying like, you need to be this public speaker. And of course, from a young age, you wanted to be a public speaker and you sort of craved that limelight early on and then felt like it wasn't going to ever happen to you. And then they were like, no, please go on the road. You're going to be a speaker for us. And suddenly you were sharing the stage with these giants of industry, and you were getting the most likes or the most, biggest awards in the show or whatever it was. That must have felt incredibly wild to you. Like, what was that like?
It really felt like, in my head, when I got on stage for the first time with them, I was like, this is it. I've made it. Mm-hmm. Like, it felt like my Hollywood moment that I had dreamed of my whole life. Because I was just 5 years old when I told my parents, I'm going to move to Hollywood and be an actress. We still have a school project that I did when I was in grade 6. I was 11 years old, and we had to create like a film reel of what we thought our life was going to be. And my film reel that I created was literally like moving to Los Angeles, being an actress in movies, being a singer-songwriter. Like, that was just always my dream. I was obsessed with the early 2000s stars, Lindsay Lohan and Hilary Duff. I, wanted to be that triple threat. I was a competitive dancer. I took vocal lessons, piano, drums. I did stage performance acting classes, improv classes. It was all I wanted. I was definitely like a theater kid through and through. That was my identity. And then when I went blind and I realized nobody in Hollywood is like me, like, I don't see myself represented. And if I don't see myself represented, how do I know that it's even possible to achieve that? Mm-hmm. Especially coming from, the suburbs of Toronto. Like, I was like, how am I going to get my way to America, to the big Los Angeles, and get into this really, really historically exclusive industry? I just felt like it was hopeless. And so by just 18, 4 years later, to be offered this opportunity to speak to audiences as large as 20,000 in stadiums that pop stars perform in, and to have screaming fans in front of me, and to be working alongside A-list celebrities. Like, I had a full-time assistant at 18 years old. I was traveling the world. I was literally rubbing shoulders with like Demi Lovato and Jennifer Hudson. Like, that was my life. And it was like, whoa, this is crazy. This is a dream come true. And all of that is what made me so susceptible to putting up with a lot less than I deserved.
Wow. Well, you can tell how intoxicating it felt by how you described it. And anybody, particularly at that age, would fall victim to that. I mean, it's obviously, they know that. That's why they did it. But then after it didn't work out, you were so upset in the worst place. And can I just read a paragraph or two from that part of the book? Absolutely. You said, I decided that the only way to avoid being hurt by the world was to avoid the world entirely and spend as much time as possible in the comfort and safety of my bedroom. I stopped public speaking. I stopped performing. I stopped doing all of these different things that I was passionate about and that made me me. These things gave me life. They made me feel alive, but I didn't really want to be alive. I was suicidal. I just wanted to hide myself away from the world and pretend I didn't exist. I believed that if I hid myself away, the world couldn't hurt me anymore. And then you said later, I was learning that it was okay to grieve the loss of the girl I'd been and the life I'd thought I was going to have. Grieving, and this is what you said in our conversation, but grieving the death of yourself while trying to figure out how to keep living is a profound experience. And then one more passage, sorry, people, and this is from all over the book, but people say that suicide is selfish. And while I understand why someone might feel that way, when I was struggling with suicidal thoughts, it actually felt like the very opposite. In my mind, Molly was already dead and gone, and what remained was simply a physical body that needed to be cared for. I was a burden on all those around me who still loved me, and there were very few of them. I was a shell of a human, with everything that made me me already stripped away by vision loss, bullies, and depression. If I were to go, it was far from selfish. It would actually be selfless. I'd be giving them a gift by removing this dead weight from their lives. Once I had decided that ending my life was probably what was best for everyone, I felt more at peace than I had in a very long time. My final parting gift to my family was to make their life easier by leaving it. So sad. Yeah. Molly, oh my gosh.
I think we stigmatize mental health so much, but so many people are impacted by it every single day. And I really hate this rhetoric of suicide is selfish because it really demonizes it even more. And it's like none of us get to that place because we're mentally well, right? And so to then demonize us even further and make us feel even worse about it isn't helpful. And I think also the flip side of that is that unfortunately not everybody makes it out of that place to be able to share what it really feels like. And I think the people who say it's selfish perhaps have never been there. And so I want to share, at least from my perspective, what it felt like, in the hopes that other people who've also been there would maybe say, like, yes, this puts words to thoughts that I felt but didn't know how to express to my loved ones. And then for those who have been impacted by suicide in their life, some understanding of perhaps what their loved ones had felt like when they were in that place.
Wow. Well, it's really brave of you to share that, the most vulnerable thoughts of such a dark place. So thank you. And to see you so radiant now, just beaming on the release of this book and with all of your success, it's amazing. It's so inspiring. And I'm sure many people will feel that way just seeing this contrast. Tell me a little bit more about how you pick up and keep going, because you do this throughout the book. One setback after another, including when you walked off the stage thanks to your terrible assistant or whatever, and you had such a terrible neck injury. Like, how do you bounce back? What is the secret to that?
Resilience is a skill, and I think it takes a lot of practice. I was forced to develop resilience, but it is something that everybody needs because challenge is something that we will continue to have to overcome time and time again. And it's a theme that runs throughout the book, as you mentioned. I talk a lot about duality. I open the book and end the book with the idea of duality, that good and bad coexist in our lives. And we will continue to have to overcome them. And for a long time, when I was younger and more naive, I thought, okay, I did it. I got through my big challenge. I'm good. And then I kept facing them. And every time I faced more, I was like, surely this is the last one. And at this point, at 31, I've realized, no, I've got many more to come, as much as that pains me to think about. But the reality is, every single time I face new challenges, I know that I have the tools in my toolbox from the previous challenges I faced. And so what I encourage people to do is that if you have not yet met a life circumstance that has forced you to develop resilience, intentionally develop it so it's there and you have those tools when you need them. And what that can look like is getting out of your comfort zone, doing things that scare you, and proactively changing your mindset. So when you hear no, don't just take it as a no. Flip that and think, okay, this is a challenge. I'm not just going to accept this no. I'm going to say, okay, how am I going to get it to a yes? How am I going to find a new path to reach that goal? Don't see obstacles as setbacks. See them as setups. They're helping you prepare to bound you to the next step in your life.
Amazing. And in the book, you talk about how you developed your big following of today, how you were like, I think I'm just going to start this YouTube thing and let's see what happens. And it's grown and grown and grown, obviously. Talk a little bit about that and how it has been sort of becoming this star in a new medium from when you were first coveting Hollywood and then realizing actually it's like already on your computer.
Well, it's funny because when I went blind at 14, I stopped consuming mainstream media because at large, it was not accessible to me. The audio description was not what it is today. We still lack a lot of audio description, which in case anybody doesn't know, audio description is essentially like what closed captioning is to the deaf, but for the blind. So it's an audio track that gets layered over the audio of a movie or TV show. And in between the gaps in dialogue, it fills in the visuals that are a necessity to understand the full scope of what's happening in the scene. And so that was not widely available when I went blind at 14 in 2008. So I stopped enjoying media. And it's funny because now people will reference something that I really probably should know that was like really popular when I was in high school or my early 20s. And I'm like, nope, got no idea. I skipped movies and TV for like a good decade of my life, so I'm missing a lot. And now that AD is more widely accessible, I've been loving going back and watching a lot of old television and movies, even ones that I did watch when I had a bit of sight, but they now have audio descriptions, so I'm picking up all the nuance of what I missed. But anyways, little side tangent, but I stopped enjoying mainstream media, but what I found instead to fill that void was social media. And it was by no means what it is today. It was really this pretty new up and coming space. Nobody was being paid to do it. Nobody had good quality cameras, but it didn't matter to me. I couldn't see the visuals. I was just listening. And it was so easy because I found these girls who were all just around the same age as me, talking about beauty and fashion and lifestyle. And they just sat in their bedroom and talked to the camera, almost like a podcast. It was really audio forward. And even when they would hold up products, they would describe it in detail because the video quality was so poor. So they had to describe it really well. So it was kind of like this really great way for me to be entertained and also feel connected because, as I said, I lost all my friends. So now I had social media to both feel a connection to girls my age and things that I loved. And also I had a form of entertainment that felt accessible to me. So I really fell in love with social media. And throughout my high school, in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, I'd love to do that one day. That would be so cool. That would be so fun. And eventually, when I left this, what some call a corporate cult, I ended up deciding I was ready to take the plunge and start my own channel at 20 years old and in my parents' house and started filming and uploading. And at the time, well, social media had grown quite a lot larger in those years. It was now 2014. There was still no disability representation. I could find like maybe 5 channels that were very small of different disabilities of creators all over the world, but there was nobody really succeeding. And it felt like mainstream media. Like we had just not kind of had our moment yet. And I thought, well, mainstream media has a lot of gatekeepers, but social media, the only gatekeeper is the viewer, the general public. They either resonate with you or they don't. And so I took the plunge, and I never, ever, ever expected it would be what it is today. It's been 11 years, almost 5 million followers across platforms later. And now I'm so proud to say that the disability community is thriving on social media. There are so many creators with different disabilities making a full-time living, running their own business, sharing their lives, educating, building community, changing misconceptions, and it's incredible.
That is incredible. Well, how amazing to have been at the forefront of a movement like that, which has helped so many. And I love that on your channel, you're educating the rest of us for what sighted people should know, what the common things are that upset you, or and all of that. So you're really not just showing us amazing blush and all of that, but also teaching us how to get what you need, how we should be more sensitive, what we should know, what we might not have thought of, which is really wonderful. Tell me about your content creation and how this is just a part now of what you do and how that comes to pass.
My content is definitely a wide spectrum. I think that my content is really self-expression of who I am as a person, which is very multifaceted, as we all are. And I don't want to put myself into one box because I'm creative. Like I need the freedom to play. And so my content is, I guess if you have to put it in a category, it's lifestyle, but lifestyle, of course, with the disability twist. So I do content ranging from makeup and fashion to travel, to advocacy and education around disability and service dogs. But I really like to try to keep it fun and light and entertaining. Not always light. There's been a fair share of tears because, again, that's the spectrum of life experience of human emotion. Is there's really beautiful moments, but there's really hard moments. And the one thing that I missed in the creators that I grew up watching and loving was the vulnerability of the hard stuff. There was an era of showing the pristine, the perfect, really glamorizing your own life, that highlight reel. And as a young person who went through so much at such a young age, that was the one part that I didn't resonate with. It was like, oh, that's like the life I want, but it's far from the life I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a commitment to myself when I started 11 years ago that I was going to show the full spectrum of my life, not just the good, because that doesn't do anybody any justice. It's important to show that there is duality, that there is the bittersweetness, and that that's okay, that you have your bad days and you have your good days, you have your hard moments and you have your incredible ones. And the incredible ones are what we live for, you know? You got to ride out those downs and live for the ups. And every down, just remember the up comes again.
So what are you most scared of right now?
Releasing a book is terrifying. As much as I've done everything I can to legally protect myself, of course I'm still scared. Again, that's why I've not shared so many of these stories for so long. And I mean, I could have made the whole book just on that corporate experience. Like there was so much more. And it was really hard going through that legal rewrite process where I did have to change so much and find a way to still do my story justice while keeping myself safe, which was such an interesting experience. But I'm still terrified. I'm terrified that people won't like it. I wrote this entirely on my own. I did not have a ghostwriter. I did not have a co-writer. I did not have AI. I did this all on my own, and I'm not a writer. And I've never written a book in full like this before. And it was a really difficult journey. I think the editing was a lot harder than the writing. The writing was like this cathartic, creative brain dump. And the editing was piecing it into some semblance of something that makes sense. And that was really difficult. And also deciding like what doesn't need to be there, what doesn't serve the book, but is still meaningful to me. Like there's so many complicated parts of editing. And so it's ended up as the book that it is. And it's just terrifying to think that I spent a year and a half writing this, 2.5 years working on it from beginning of the proposal process to when it's on shelves on September 23rd. And it's been such a commitment of my time, of my love, of myself. And it's just terrifying to think maybe people won't like it or maybe it won't resonate because, as I said, I'm not a writer. You know, it's very much written in my own voice, in my own style, in my own tone. And so, yeah, it's just really scary to think that people won't like something that took so much of me.
Well, those feelings are totally normal. You would be an aberration if you were not worried about a book coming out. Every author, I think, has those pre-launch jitters and is convinced that the book is like terrible and that they have to like, pull it from the market the second, like it's too late and it's out of your control and oh my gosh, now what? But they are going to like it. Your book is good. It's a great story. It's inspiring. And books should be written in the voice. I mean, obviously it's fine to have help, but you know, the fact that it's your voice is what is going to make people drawn to it because they want to hear from you. So it's easy for me to say, oh, don't worry, Molly. But, you know, I'm just saying I get it. And I'm looking forward to you feeling the joy that comes with knowing that people are liking it.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody keeps assuring me that it's a normal feeling to have. So I'm comforted in that. But yeah, I think, you know, you put so much of yourself into something and so many vulnerable things that you've never shared. And one thing that I was really passionate about going into writing this book was that this book is not written in a way that's just supposed to make me look perfect. Mm-hmm. It's written in a way to share that I'm human. And that means that I'm not always perfect and that I do make mistakes and bad decisions and that there's things in this book that I'm ashamed of. But I didn't want to not put them in just because I'm ashamed. I wanted to put them in so that other people who have felt these same things and have also felt ashamed by them know that it is normal. And other people feel those things too, even if we don't readily admit them.
I love that. Well, Molly, congratulations. I'm really excited for you. I can't wait for the book to come out. And I hope that you have time to celebrate the accomplishment of all that you've done. And you're just getting started. So it's pretty cool. Congrats.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. I'll be rooting for you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks
Have
so
a great
much.
day.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you loved the show, tell a friend, leave a review, follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and spread the word. Thanks so much. Oh, and buy the books.